incredibly privileged to have a very popular FYE speaker and a very popular teacher at Sonoma State University, Professor Ajay Gehlawat, who is a professor in Hutchins School primarily. He has his PhD from the City University of New York, where he studied theater and film. He has published and presented widely on Bollywood culture and on films as diverse as Harold and Kumar, The Princess and the Frog, and Slumdog Millionaire. His highly sought-after courses in the Hutchins School cover various approaches to film and theater criticism and theory. He also is the faculty member in charge of our new, what is that? It's our new minor in film studies. What is that? An MA program in film studies as well. So there's all kinds of, if you are interested in film, the art of film, Dr. Gehlawat is the one to speak to. So we're so happy and fortunate to see him. We're all happy and fortunate to see you all back here too. Thank you. Professor Gehlawat.
Hi, how's everyone doing? All right, welcome back, FYE. Thanks very much, Scott, for that intro, and it's great to be here with you on your first day back. I'm going to talk about cultural representation, and then comes the funky part, in and of Bollywood. I couldn't decide which one I wanted, so I put them all in there. And that's partially informing our discussion today. We're going to think of cultural representation in Bollywood, cultural representation and Bollywood, and cultural representations of Bollywood. To do that, we need to first go over some basic terms, and that's why I put them up on the board. I apologize if you can't see them, but I'll just throw them out. They're the terms that make up the title of my talk. So the first one is culture, and that's one of those tricky questions. It seems so obvious. So I want to go ahead and ask you, what does culture mean? What is culture? Anybody? What is culture? Yes, in the front.
The traditions and just the way that people live their life in a given community or country.
Okay, the traditions and ways that people live their life in a community. And your name?
Diego.
Diego, great. So that's a great starting definition, good working definition. Traditions, the way people live their life. Others? Other definitions? What's culture? What could culture be? What could it encompass? Also, what if I inflect the question a little bit? What if I asked you, what does culture do? Yes? Shapes who we are. Okay, okay, great. Yes? Shapes who we are. Maybe in a double sense? Like what, for instance? It's okay. So am I. Food, okay, sure, sure. This food defines me, my culture, McDonald's, right? But we could also do it the other way around. Like, who's ever traveled abroad? Okay, anyone ever been pegged as an American by somebody from outside of our country? Okay, what do they usually start off the conversation with?
You eat McDonald's every day?
Right. Oh, you're an American, so you do this, and you do that, and you eat this, and you eat that. Right? And then you say, what are you talking about? Right? Okay, so in other words, you can use culture to define yourself, right? This is the food of my culture, and this is part of who I am. It's part of my traditions, to go back to Diego's definition. You can also be defined by culture. People can use culture to define you, whether you want to be defined that way or not, right? Oh, you're an American, so you eat McDonald's, and you do this, and that's all you watch. So, okay, culture defines us. It makes up our traditions, our habits. What about representation? What is representation? Yes? How we're seen? How we are perceived, how we perceive? Yes, definitely. What if I ask the same question with culture, representation? What does representation do? Yes?
It stands in for a larger group or whole.
Okay.
Symbolizes something bigger.
Okay, okay, good. Like a synecdoche, this idea a part for the whole. This small part represents the larger whole. I, as one American, represent, whether I want to or not, all of America, perhaps, when I travel abroad. Okay, yes? You know, we might also think of the difference with representation. So you have represent, and if I add a hyphen in there, represent. What's the difference, do you think, between those two? Between represent and represent? Especially if we add the first word to it, culture. What's the difference between I represent my culture and I represent my culture? Yes?
Limited access to a certain culture will maybe make you assume things about the culture through the limited access that you have to it.
Okay, so which one is that? The first one, represent?
That would be representing it as something that it isn't,
As something that?
that it's not through limited exposure to the culture.
Okay, okay, representing it as something it's not through limited exposure? Sure, I'm sorry. I'll try to amplify what he was saying. So representing something perhaps means to take it whole as it was, and you're representing it. This is what it was. For instance, let's use the food analogy, right? And remind me of your name. Cosmo. Okay, great. So Cosmo's example of food, right, as representing culture. Or one element of culture. Let's say I take the actual food and I represent it, right? I bring it here intact. Maybe by now it's spoiled, so you don't want to eat it, but it's the actual food. How does that differ from if I represent the food of my culture? Do I have to actually bring the actual food in here? No, right? Could I, for instance, depict it via a drawing? You see the difference? If I represent something, I can, to go back to the distinction you were making, make one, for instance, work of art stand in for the actual object or food itself. I could say, this represents that. On the other hand, if I represent something, the idea is that I am reproducing it in its entirety. This is the actual thing. And I want you to keep thinking about that, or keep it in the back of your head as we look at some of the clips I'm going to show you today. Because the question is, how are cultures represented? How are they represented? And do we sometimes blur the two, right? Do we sometimes think of a representation as representing the actual culture? You eat some food from supposedly representing a culture, and you think, oh, I am consuming that culture itself through this food. You see what I'm trying to say? So what about a couple of other words? Since we're going to talk about Bollywood, maybe I'll go backwards to get to Indianness. What is Bollywood? Let's start with that term. Anyone ever heard of Bollywood? What is it? Indian Hollywood. Yes, that's right, Diego. Exactly. The Indian Hollywood. Actually, that's exactly what they've done. They take, why B though? Any guesses? Why B instead of, I don't know, E-Hollywood? Why the B? A guess? Or does anybody know? Go for it. There's no repercussions if you get it wrong. So, oh, I'm sorry, yes. Budapest. You know, a lot of Bollywood films are increasingly shot in places like Budapest. I don't know if originally that was what they had in mind, but that is interesting. I've not heard that one yet. The city actually is not Budapest, but Bombay. And they add, Bombay is the film center of India, basically, like LA for the United States. That's where most of the Hindi language films, right? Hindi is one of the official languages of India. Anyone know what the other one is? I'll give you a hint. I'm speaking it right now. English. That's one of the results of being colonized by the British, right? They leave behind part of their culture, which is their language. And now Indians have taken it on. And it's actually become one of their 2 official languages. But in the other one, in Hindi, Hindi is a language, and Bollywood are Hindi films, films in that language. They're made in Bombay. Bombay recently just changed its name, however, actually to Mumbai, which is leading a lot of people to wonder why they haven't changed it to Mollywood, but it's still Bollywood for right now. So Bollywood is, in other words, exactly the Indian Hollywood. These popular films, they usually make about 1,000 films a year. Just to give you a sense of context, Hollywood usually makes nowhere more than half that a year. So the Indian Hindi film industry is definitely the most prolific in the world. They're constantly making films. Indians, as you can imagine, therefore, are constantly watching films because there's so many of them. India, of course, as you probably know, has a population of over 1 billion people. So when you start doing the math, right, 1,000 films a year, more than 1 billion people, it's a lot of film going. The films also tend to be very long compared to Hollywood standards, usually more than 2 hours long. If you have a 45-minute film, that would be considered short for Bollywood. 3 hours is more typically the length. So now we go back. What is Indianness? How would you define Indianness? And you might think of this term in relation to others that you add ness to, right? Like, and these are not terms you're necessarily going to find in the dictionary, although Bollywood, I think, has been introduced into the Oxford English Dictionary now. Indianness is a more colloquial term, right? Like we use it in everyday speech, but there's not an actual dictionary definition. You might compare it to, say, blackness or whiteness or Americanness, right? These are colloquial terms. So what do all those terms entail? Blackness, whiteness, Americanness, Indianness. What is that ness conveying when I put it with another word? What do you think? Yes, Cosmo.
Maybe that's done in a certain fashion.
Okay, for instance?
Maybe they make music in a certain way that's different from other people.
Okay, sure, very good, right. You're trying to define what makes that Indian, right? What is the thing about it that makes it Indian, the Indianness of it? We can see how culture starts playing a role in this, right? What else? Other ideas? Indianness? Yes? Stereotypes, absolutely, right? Again, just like with culture and representation, we can be defined sometimes against our will, right? Somebody says, oh, you are an American, therefore you are this and this and this and this. Or you are Indian, therefore you are this and this and this. So that's right, stereotypes people can create based on a notion of the cultural identity that you have, that you inhabit. So let me do this. I'm going to show you a clip. And in the process, what I'm going to try to do and what I want you to try to do is to put all of these terms together, right? Culture, representation, Indianness, Bollywood, so that we can try to see what kind of cultural representation we get of Indianness via Bollywood. All right? Sound good? All right, let's watch a clip. Let me show you a clip. So what in this sequence signifies Indianness? Just anything. What? Music. Okay, yes. The language they're speaking, absolutely. What else? And languages. You probably could hear even just hearing it, different ones. Yes? Dancing. The dancing style. Okay. Especially when she's shimmying, right? Totally Indian. Yes? Clothing, absolutely. Uh-huh. What else? The elephant. Yeah, I was waiting for that. Absolutely. Anytime you see an elephant, it's like, oh, I must be in India, right? What else? Okay, I mean, that's a good start. think of now some of the things that have been thrown out, right? Clothing, for instance. Clothing, is that inherent to a culture? Or is it inherent to your cultural identity? In other words, do you always have your clothing on, the same clothing? No, right? I mean, I could put on quote-unquote Indian clothing, right? But I could underneath have a pair of jeans on, and then suddenly if I take that Indian clothing off, what happens to my cultural identity? It changes, right? It's just that easy. What about some of the other ones that you mentioned, like language or music or elephants? Are those a little bit more closely linked to India than, say, clothing? Uh-huh. So what else? What else about this scene strikes you as being particularly Indian? Something that you wouldn't see, for instance, in another kind of clip? Yeah. Okay, the henna on her hands. Maybe also the movements that she makes, which again, maybe imitating classical Indian dance gestures. Sure. So that's a few more. Cosmo, yeah?
Perhaps the setting.
The setting, okay. Yeah, the location. All kinds of different, maybe for us, from our point of view, exotic scenery. Although again, maybe someone from India goes to Ohio and they're like, how exotic, right? Who knows? So, okay, clothing. Yes? The jewelry, absolutely. So henna, jewelry, clothing, costumes, locations, elephants. What else? There was another hand. Okay, okay. So we have quite a few. Scott in the back, yes.
Something about, I can't put this into words, but something about how men and women relate to each other seem different from Americans, and distinctively Indian. I don't know. I can't say any more than that.
Okay, okay. No, that's good. Sexuality, romantic interaction between, in this case, in a heteronormative context, right? A man and a woman. Uh-huh.
It seemed like you're dancing and men were worshiping the woman.
Okay, okay. Why?
Seemed pretty sexual.
Okay, so it seems sexual, like sexual worship? Is that what you're saying?
One dude and a girl were like up on each other.
Okay, okay. Okay, I understand what you're saying, I think. Yes?
Just like how all the dudes were like gathered around her and just kind of like she's the center of attention there.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. She's definitely the center of attention. The guys seem to be, you could say, worshiping her, definitely focusing on her. Also, I don't know if you notice skin color differences, pigmentation, right? She's very light-skinned, fair-skinned compared to the men who tend to be darker-skinned, right? That too maybe embellishes that kind of contrast, right? All these men, darker skinned, surrounding this very light-skinned woman and quote-unquote worshiping her, as you put it, right? Which starts to add on different connotations now too, if we think about it that way, plus the gender, which maybe adds to the sexual nature of your observation. So yeah, we have a lot of different elements there. The title too, again, I'll put it on the board for you. You might think of, in a broader sense, Dilse, D-I-L-S-E. Dil in Hindi is the heart. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a Bollywood movie with Dil somewhere thrown into the title, because it's always about like the heart this, the heart that. Dilse, from the heart. What if we took that title and extrapolated and said that what we see here is from the heart of, because the title itself says ... right? An ellipsis, from the heart. From the heart of what? From the heart of India? Could we say, for all the reasons, all the elements you've all described, clothing, locations, elephants, henna, that this is from the heart of quote-unquote India? Possibly? Oh, okay. You're thinking. So let me show you another clip. And what I want you to do between these two clips is, how does quote-unquote Indian culture change? This was 1998. I'm going to show you a clip from 2016. And I just realized, actually, since you're a freshman, that this might more or less chart the arc of your life, right? 98 to 2016. maybe from the time when you were very young or just born to today, more or less, just a few years ago. What had happened in that time frame, in roughly 18 to 20 years? So let me show you the second clip, and then we'll keep talking. So, what's changed? Ooh. What's changed? Clothes. Okay, yeah.
Takes place in Paris.
Takes place in Paris. What else? Yes, in the back. Where are the elephants? That's right. Maybe they're in bed in the hotel. I don't know. What else? Locations have changed. Clothing has changed. Yes.
The departure from tradition.
Departure from tradition. Okay, this is nice. What's your name? Josh. Josh is raising a good point because that in turn raises another question, or it assumes a prior definition of tradition, right? If you can say there's a departure from tradition, you know what that tradition was. Yeah.
I guess kind of like before, like it was always like teasing, like kiss and everything, and then this one they just like go like all in.
All in. That's right. Okay, good. So increased displays of sexuality, public displays of super affection. Yes? Which may be going back to Josh's point about a departure from tradition, because again, we assume, perhaps erroneously, that Indian tradition does not encourage public displays of super affection. You don't go all in publicly. Maybe the elephants, but what else? Yes, Kim.
Is there something going on with colorism different here?
Yeah, maybe. What do you see?
It just seems like there's now more emphasis on lighter skin in both the male and the female.
Okay, quite possibly. Yeah, definitely not as much of a contrast as before, which might also reflect the other shifts away from tradition and the kind of sexual worship and the tamer sexual interactions in the first clip. Yes? I'm sorry. So Kim was again saying maybe there's a bit of a difference in the coloration in this sequence. In other words, I think Kim was noticing that both the male and the female character here have generally lighter skin. And you don't have as much of the contrast as you did in the first clip, where the men all tend to be darker and the woman was quite light skinned. Right? What else? What else do you notice here? Yes?
The Bollywood dance style changed.
Ah, yeah. How? Describe it.
I feel like I would kind of say it in dance terms, but this one's more contemporary than the past Bollywood, so it's not as much fingers and classic moves. It has a lot more kind of like hip hop and what you would see in our LA.
Okay. Okay, sure. That's a good point. I think this also maybe leads to my other questions, which are, you know, what if anything signifies Indianness, quote unquote, in this sequence? Given everything that you've all noted, the changes in the dance style, the clothing, the costumes, the location. This is in France, right? I mean, there are Indians in France, but what about this sequence says Indian, if anything? The language? Okay, okay, that's right. It's still being sung in Hindi. Anything else? Yes, in the back?
I've only seen like a few Bollywood movies, but they tend to like have more like musical themes than like movies that you see like produced in Hollywood.
Sure. But even here, I think going back to the earlier comment, it seems like it's different than the first clip, right? Maybe less quote unquote traditional. The setting doesn't seem as Indian. It's Paris. The clothing, whenever they have anything on, definitely doesn't seem necessarily stereotypically Indian, right? Not what you would think of or what a tourist agency would necessarily have up. I mean, imagine if you went to a tourist agency to go into India and they had these images from this clip, like, exciting India. Really? This is India? So what's happened? This is my other question, to go back to your observation about the changes in the dance style. What's shifted? What's changed? I mean, try to synthesize now all those individual elements that you've all correctly noted. Clothing, dance, settings, skin colors, interactions, sexuality. How would you put all that together? What would you if you could come up with a word to describe that, what would it be, that shift?
Like modernized.
Modernized?
Like they want to see more Western.
Okay, more Western. Here too, Josh, those are good concepts, right, to throw out. Think of the implication, though, if we say that India has become modernized, and especially when we have westernized as a kind of quick synonym for modernized. What's the implication then? That Indianness, before it became modernized or westernized, was what? Okay, or less modern, pre-modern, traditional again, right? The notion that tradition and modernity are on opposite ends of the spectrum. If you become more modern, you're less traditional. Also, this idea of equating it with the West, the more modern you become, the more westernized. What if I throw out the other word that Scott mentioned at the outset? What if I said globalized? What about this clip speaks to globalization? Yes, Carlos.
It seems like it's become more cosmopolitan, meaning there's more affluence, there's more world trends involved, including dancing, which is like a hip-hop style.
Okay, absolutely. So Carlos is just noting that there's a lot of cosmopolitan details in this sequence. Cosmopolitanism reflecting like a mixture of different elements, somebody who can travel the world, be just as equally at home in Paris as in India, wearing all kinds of different clothes, interacting with different people. We see them in all kinds of venues, right? They're in a soccer match, they're in hotels, they're in Paris on the streets, they go to a night show, and they always seem to be, the title too, carefree. That's what befikare means, to be carefree. Maybe that resonates with being cosmopolitan too. Yes?
I was gonna say maybe just appeal to like global audience.
Okay.
Just make it like a pop sound and kind of something that you don't have to be from that culture or that area to understand and be a part of. It's just like a catchy beat that anyone can play.
Okay. So, and remind me of your name? Michael. Michael's point is a good one. He's saying maybe this almost becomes a universal kind of culture to be globalized. Everyone can identify with it. Everyone can relate to it. So despite maybe the fact that it's still in Hindi, you can identify with it more easily maybe than with the first clip. It seems locatable in a world that you know, a Western world, a modern world, the music also, the dancing, to go back to the point. All of this seems more, I don't know, accessible perhaps, more familiar. Yes?
It seems like part of the reason, though, that it feels familiar is that Hollywood's been influenced by Bollywood, so that you have La La Land kind of responding to the musical tropes of Bollywood.
Right.
So we have musicals now in the United States, which I gotta think are somewhat reflective of the popularity of Bollywood.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. Now we're getting into exactly the kind of going back and forth with cultural exchange, right? In other words, cultural exchange is not one way. And this is where we might rethink what you were saying about tradition and modernity and this notion that's implicit sometimes. We don't say it so explicitly that the more modern I become, the less traditional I am. Think of it in terms of roots, right? A lot of people define that in terms of, this notion of my cultural roots. The more Western I became, the implication is the less in touch with my cultural roots I was. So the idea is that these two, for instance, are almost de-Indianized, if we follow that kind of logic. But I think the point you're making is a good one, because maybe there's reciprocity. Maybe just as Bollywood, like its name itself, is reflecting an influence from Hollywood, but also a response. Hollywood, in turn, maybe with films like La La Land, is saying, okay, and here, one back is our response to your response to us. So it's a dialogue, right? It's an exchange. So, yes?
You made a comparison between like our lifetime, because it's like the general.
Yes.
From the second clip, you could tell like it was more materialistic by like the cars, the clothes, the activities.
Yes.
And then you also noticed that both characters in the second clip were like more physically like fit.
Yes.
Extremely toned, and the guy's muscles were like on his arms were like fairly big.
Right. Yes. I agree. fairly big, definitely. He,
Materialistic and just like to our classic standards of what people should look like or what they should be doing, in a sense, or like what they should.
definitely agree with you. And your name?
Danielle.
Danielle's raising a lot of good points. The physicality, right? Not just the colors, but their attire, but their bodies and the display of those bodies, right? It's almost like this is a metrosexual ethos. The man is fit, he's manscaped, right? And he has no qualms in showing off his beautiful, chiseled, manscaped, fairly fit body, right? So you can also say, as I think you were, there's a consumer element here, a heightened consumerism. We see them constantly going to events that you would have to pay for, embracing objects that you would have to purchase. They steal them, right? The little bikini underwear. But the idea is like possessions, right? If you compare that to the first one, all we have are the elephants, right? And nobody is taking those home. They're just there for display. Yeah.
I don't know much about Bollywood, so I'm wondering if it's significant that really this was the second clip was just two people.
Yes.
Kind of an individualistic approach, whereas it's a whole cast, in the first one, singing, and we're all part of it. There's a community, the family is there. And
Sure.
can you talk about that differently?
Absolutely, and that's a great point because, again, there's an implicit assumption about India, or if we use India as an example of another culture, or if you want to think of another as two words, other culture with a capital O, a culture essentially different from ours, right? The old Kipling poem, East is East, West is West, right? This is essentially different. So following that kind of logic, you could say, well, yeah, the first clip seems to adhere to this notion of the community being very important, much more than the individual, right? And you probably heard these kind of notions in discussions of India. The individual is not the focus, it's the family, the larger social unit. And you're right, that's reflected here too. It's a good example of the shift to a more modern, Western example. It's just the couple. They're also constantly doing things for themselves, right? They're just ruining like the soccer match for everybody else because they have their little kicks. He dares the girl to go kiss the other girl. Who knows what impact that has on the relationship of that girl with her boyfriend. But it's all very much for like pleasure, for our personal selfish pleasure. So maybe as a way of wrapping up, I want to throw out a couple more questions for you. And these are questions to maybe keep thinking about, not just today, but for the duration of the semester as you engage with the notion of being global citizens and what it means to be globalized. Maybe Bollywood is also quoting or representing Indianness, right? In other words, no one culture or culture industry has a monopoly on representation. Slumdog Millionaire, for instance, was a British film with a British director. A lot of people saw the film as Indian. Other people said, no, that's an American film, like a Hollywood film. So you have lots of cultural claims. A lot of different cultures say, oh, it's mine, or it speaks to my culture for this reason. Look at these elements. But then another culture pops up and says, no, it's mine. So you have a fight. You have a contest almost. Bollywood could also be reproducing elements, stereotypical elements that it thinks represent Indianness for a large public. If I asked you, which of these two clips do you think was geared more towards a Western audience? What would you say? The first or the second? The second? How many people say the second clip? Oh, wow, okay, almost everybody. Anybody feel like the first clip? Yes, Scott. And why? Why the first one?
Because if I'm watching Bollywood, I want to be in India.
Ah, okay, right. I mean, and this is the point to think about, right? Exoticism. Just like we have cosmopolitanism, maybe the flip side of that, cosmopolitanism is kind of more positively inflected, right? Oh, that's so cosmopolitan. What a cosmopolitan life you have. Even though I think Carlos notes correctly that there's a class implication too. You have to have access to cosmopolitanism. Not everyone does. But the flip side maybe is exoticism, right? I don't want to see something that's just like my culture or people imitating Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone in Paris. I want the real goods, the real India, right? And now we start to see how stereotypes are constructed and then create a life of their own. So think about these questions for down the road. How can we assess the cultural authenticity of representations? How can we assess the authenticity of cultural representations? There's no answer in the back of the book, right? Oh, wait, 2 elephants, 6 palm trees, authentic. No, right? This is a very subjective question in a lot of ways. The second question I want to ask you to think about throughout the semester, what are the implications of being culturally inauthentic? I'm assuming no one's ever gotten that before, right? Where someone comes up to you and says, you are so culturally inauthentic. Maybe not in those words. But if and when someone throws that out, what do they mean? Which of these 2 clips, or perhaps both, are culturally authentic or inauthentic? And almost more important than that question is, how can you tell? What do you turn to gauge the authenticity or the inauthenticity of any cultural representation? Thank you.